international community should be protecting those grain ships from Odessa. If we led that call, if we made that happen, we'd actually reduce inflation here directly because the price of grain internationally would go down. Let's pull that apart, perhaps a little bit more carefully. I think what we need to do is see what are the mistakes that we have made. It's been a bruising summer with this leadership contest. Clearly, Liz Truss has not had the start that she was anticipating. Party conference was almost used as a public stress test to her economic plans that neither the cabinet nor indeed the parliamentary party were aware of. We got there in the end. It was a solid speech by the Prime Minister to conclude conference. It's given the Prime Minister time to reflect, to reevaluate, and I hope now to radically regroup her team and indeed her vision to be more inclusive with a view to uniting all wings of the party. So it's not part of the party that we emulate or identify with, but the Tory brand as a whole. If we have greater buy-in, that will lead to better discipline, and that will, I hope, lead to, with more humility, allow us to rectify some of the challenge, the problems that we've experienced.
It's interesting you viewed it as a sort of an attempt to unite the party, because actually, is there a risk that anyone who questions any policy being dismissed as a member of the anti-growth coalition with the Labour Party and the Lib Dems? It doesn't feel very inclusive. It feels very much like you're either with us or you're against us.
Well, I didn't quite understand that. I need to stress that our party does best when we dominate the middle ground, and Margaret Thatcher emulated this as well. This is, this person that everybody has tried to emulate in this leadership contest throughout the actual summer itself. I recall, as you probably remember, you had Hezza and Clark, the Tory wets on one side, those big beasts. You also had Norman Tebbit and Nigel Lawson on the other. Margaret Thatcher benefited by having valued, informed, experienced people round the table, but that all, once you left the cabinet room, you had that collective responsibility. If you just have your friends round the table, if you ignore other facets of the actual party itself, then I think you get yourself into trouble. And I just underline the fact that we appeal to the nation. We win general elections by coming across as a centrist, moderate conservative party, not as extreme. It's the same with Labour as well. If they go to the left with Corbyn, there was no chance of them ever going to win a general election. We're up against it now. We need to be, we need to recognise the challenges that we face, but the avenue in which we need to get out of this, if we want any chance of retaining seats and indeed winning the next general election.
You're talking about the cabinet. Present company accepted. Who would you like to see around the cabinet table that isn't there at the moment to have that breadth and expertise that you're talking about?
Well, I'm not going to go into listing names. I think before you even get there, you need to confirm what your vision is, the direction of travel that you want to go. There's no doubt about it that we need to promote higher growth. That is the mission, increased productivity. And that requires bold leadership and that team around it to deliver. It requires risk-taking. It requires challenging the status quo. But you do need the buy-in of your cabinet. You need to red team test your ideas, and then you need to be able to communicate them so others are then motivated to follow you, even if they're not in cabinet. And that simply didn't happen. We recognize that. And of course, without that communications, the markets were then panicked, unclear as to how the unfunded tax cuts would be paid for. And that led to a cost of borrowing going up and, of course, impact on mortgages. So we have a slight pause now. We have a recognition that we're up against it. We have the talent on the backbenches, and we do have the ability, I think, to regroup and recognize bold leadership is required, but only if we work together. Otherwise, as we do, as our party is famous for, it isn't the opposition that gets the better of us. It's ourselves and civil war.
To sort of paraphrase what you're saying, Tobias, these are bad ideas sprung on a cabinet which isn't very good and then badly sold to the public. That's how we've ended up in this situation.
I'm not going to parrot your sort of sensationalism here, but we need to recognise things have not gone to plan. To date, there are some absolutely radical and bold ideas that have got lost because of other aspects which have dominated and overshadowed. So this, the 45p tax rate has overshadowed what we're doing with stamp duty, has overshadowed what we're doing with support for energy bills. But I would add another dimension to this, which seems to be completely lost. In today's day and age, you cannot draft a budget in silo. Over the years, we've embraced globalisation. We've opened up our markets. But increasing global uncertainty means this post-Cold War presumption of ever closer economic and financial integration is fragmenting fast.
Yeah.
If over half our GDP is affected by international headwinds, then you need a foreign policy statement with your budget statement. For example, the international community should be protecting those grain ships from Odessa. If we led that call, if we made that happen, we'd actually reduce inflation here directly because the price of grain internationally would go down. That's the sort of thinking that I'd like to see from this Conservative government.
And how long does Liz Truss have to at least show signs of learning some of the lessons that you're talking about, having a more collegiate approach, getting better at selling those policies? Your colleague Grant Shapps was talking about, he wanted to see at least some movement in 10 days. I think you've talked about Christmas possibly you want to see something by. How long has she got to show that she's listened and learned and is turning things around?
I think the journalist that asked me that question in The Guardian was having a bit of fun with this. I said, we certainly need to see change and a plan by Christmas. We won't necessarily see the evidence that the economy is turning around immediately. Going back to Margaret Thatcher, it took many years. What we need to do is have confidence that that's the direction of travel that we want to go, which is why I strongly encourage that this fiscal statement due on November the 23rd, I think it is, that must be brought forward along with the OBR checks as well. And indeed, as I just touched on, a foreign policy statement that comes with it to say, what on earth are we going to do to challenge the insecurity in Eastern Europe, which is affecting oil, affecting gas, and affecting food prices as well. We simply cannot ignore that and plan a budget in the UK in silo.